The following is a presentation by the Production 2 classes at Homewood Flossmoor High School. It's an in-depth report on topics that matter to you. Brought to you by WHFH 88.5 FM Flossmoor. Now, here is Documentary 2019.
Imagine the human race on the brink of extinction, scarce food supply, diminishing economy, and our dystopia unfolding before our very eyes. Take a movie like World War Z, which is about zombies taking over the world, or Terminator 2, when artificial intelligence brings the world to its knees. You may think of these flicks when talking about apocalypse or extinction, but the cause may be something much, much smaller: bees. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Ben Hilligan for WHFH 88.5 FM, and welcome to Bees, the Climb of the Decline. Bees are needed for us humans and animals to thrive, since they provide us with the food on our table every day and night. Without bees, all life on Earth would simply disappear. So picture yourself rummaging through some dumpsters for any sort of nourishment, but cannot find anything. Before we can take an inside look on what will happen, we should focus on what bees do for us. Larry Vina, a local gardener, explains a bee's main purpose for the world.
They pollinate all our vegetables. If it wasn't for the bees, we would be in trouble. We would die. Bees are very important. They're responsible for a third of all the vegetables in the world.
A lot of people don't realize how important bees are to the world and its economy. Marty Arrivo, for the Homewood Florist, emphasizes how bees are responsible for flowers that are produced all over the earth.
A lot of, floral and gardening and all that, the bees pollinate the flowers. And no bees, a lot of the flowers don't get pollinated, and that would impact our business greatly. A lot of flowers that we get, obviously they're greenhouse grown and they're not, it's not pollinated with bees, but in the summer months we buy a lot of flowers that are locally grown, farmers markets, things like that, and all of that stuff's growing outside, and all of it has to be pollinated by bees.
90% of crops grown are dependent on bees, so their importance for the entire world can be shown here. Now the situation should be addressed: bees extinction. Bees have been dying at a very rapid rate, and such instances have been occurring from as early as 1869. But starting in the 1970s, scientists began to see that feral honeybees were dying very quickly. And this also happened in 2006, and then again when bee populations dropped by 23% in the winter of 2013. Even today, we're seeing millions of hives disappearing without a trace, and there's definitely reasons as to why this is happening, varying from pesticides and chemicals farmers spray on their crops to the consistent climate change. But Brian Thompson, one of the owners of the Honey Lake Bee Company, has the main reason why the bees are dying at a very alarming rate.
And now, after doing a lot of research, and we've kind of figured out what's causing it. And it's from a tiny mite called Varroa destructor that moved into the United States in the late 80s and 90s and spread very quickly across the United States. And the mite itself sucks the hemoglobin or the blood of the bee, so it weakens the bee, shortens its lifespan, but also transmits a lot of diseases of bees from one bee to another.
Colony collapse disorder, or CCD, is the phenomenon that occurs when the majority of worker bees in a colony disappear and leave behind a queen, plenty of food, and a few nurse bees to take care of the remaining immature bees. This was the name scientists gave it when they noticed that these bees were dying. As the Varroa mites are the main cause of the population diminishing, we still can't forget about those pesticides. Farmers use them to kill disease carriers and nuisances like mosquitoes, ticks, and other vermin. What they don't realize is that they're also harming bees since they're trying to pollinate crops that the pesticides quietly lay upon. Climate change is also another cause of the bee decline. People don't understand how much of a toll it's taking on these bees. Due to the temperatures rising each year, bees are forced to move into cooler habitats and even weaken them, making them more vulnerable to diseases and parasites to latch onto them. These causes can easily kill off the bees, and if the bees finally die, the catastrophic things will happen to humanity. Chris Stiglick, a biology and zoobot teacher at Homewood Flossmoor High School, explains what would happen to the world if bees were to suddenly go extinct.
Most of the food we eat would be gone, which means we'd have to find other types of foods that are non-pollinated types of foods, which we don't have much of that. So we'd have to make some drastic changes as far as our food supplies go, and we'd probably have less variety in our diets. That we'd probably have overall, if it was immediate, we'd probably have a big shortage of food and food types, which would create a huge problem for the planet as a whole.
World-famous German theoretical physicist Albert Einstein is thought to have said, "If the bee disappears from the surface of the earth, man would have no more than 4 years to live." But did he really say that? Who knows? This theory is said to be wrong, since there's a good chance humanity wouldn't go extinct, but instead go nearly hungry. Food prices would skyrocket, so be grateful how cheap food is now, because if those bees are in fact wiped off the face of the earth, kiss that bank account goodbye. Bees make billions of dollars for the government from the foods they help produce, and after the last bee inhales its last breath, the government would have to raise prices for food so they can keep the country in balance without everything going to insanity. But that would probably still be inevitable. There could be countless riots due to food prices rising substantially, and although there's good reason, people didn't take action to stop the bees' extinction. This would be our apocalypse, and it is the most realistic aside from the eruption of the Yellowstone supervolcano in Utah. But we can prevent this apocalypse from happening, which we'll take a look at after a quick commercial break.
We will never fully understand what we've asked of our military service members, of their families or their children, asking them to deploy, patrol, stay on watch, on point, asking them to put themselves in harm's way, to endure it all. But we do understand that it's our turn, our duty, to bring them all the way home, to keep them secure, to have their backs for the rest of their lives. Wounded Warrior Project long-term support programs do whatever it takes to help our most severely ill or injured veterans live independently, at no cost, for life, so that they might stand at ease. Find out how you can help at findwwp.org.
Welcome back to WHFH 88.5 FM Flossmoor. You're listening to Bees, the climb of the decline. We'll now be taking a look at what we can do as citizens to help save the lives of these amazing insects that give us the food we can eat on our dinner tables every night and day. There are so many different ways that we can assist our little pollinator friends. One such thing is to try and prevent pesticides from being sold. Let people know the harmful effects these chemicals have on bees. And if enough word is spread around, there's a very good chance that pesticides can get discontinued with enough support from citizens all over the United States. Then there's an even more important solution that a lot of people, especially those who reside within suburbs, resort to, and that such thing is beekeeping. Pam Lawler, who has been a beekeeper for many years around Flossmoor and even Michigan, talks about how she got into the hobby and how people are beginning to do it as well. She also states that the more people get into beekeeping, the more bees that are born and allowed to thrive.
So we got the bees, and then we started reading books and taking classes online. And I think as more people start getting into bees, because there's all these books, backyard beekeeping, and how people are doing it in big cities like downtown Chicago on the rooftops of their buildings. And I think as more people get into this backyard beekeeping and just become aware of the issues that are out there, that's helping to repopulate the bees. And then, I'm going to be honest, before we had bees, I would spray my plants and rose bushes with pesticides because I'd get those nasty Japanese beetles, so I'd be putting pesticides on it. Now that we have bees, I'm trying to come up with all different ways so that we don't use those pesticides and the bees survive and thrive.
The loss in bee population can severely damage all life on planet Earth. The causes include parasites, pesticides, and climate change. Effects of bee extinction would also result in the very slow but inevitable extinction of our own kind. However, there are plenty of things we can do to keep bees alive. such as fighting against the production of pesticides that hold danger for bees, like making petitions or boycotting them online. You can also spread the word to those around your area on the situation and encourage them to try beekeeping. And if you would be interested in doing that, then try it. It does not hurt at all. If it weren't for bees, we would be extremely scarce on food supply, since we need that to survive. But if bees can no longer provide, neither can we for our families and loved ones if there's not enough food to go around. That is why we need to act now if we want to flourish on this planet. But we cannot do so if bees are wiped off the face of the earth. This is exactly why we must band together as a planet to preserve these precious creatures. They are the reason we are alive today, and if they disappear, so do we. Thank you for listening to Bees, The Climb of the Decline. I'm your host and producer, Ben Hilgen, and I would like to thank my engineer, Remy Casali, for the assistance on this doc, along with Mark Sosowski, Zach Luter, and other classmates such as Eliana Dosici, Emma Murphy, Austin Smales, and Jackie Klubchek. For more information, please visit www.greenpeace.org in order to learn how you can be of assistance to stop the bees' extinction. I'll repeat that again, www.greenpeace.org. This concludes Bees, The Climb of the Decline from WHFH 88.5 FM Flossmoor. I hope all of you listeners have a great rest of your day. Peace out, HF.
That concludes today's documentary, brought to you by WHFH 88.5 FM and Homewood Flossmoor High School. Thanks for listening. We now return you to your normal programming.